Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, brass tacks for the Pac-12, and we're talking Red Raider newcomers, returners, and making a hand for Joey McGuire. Next on Locked On Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to start this thing off right. Everything runs through Lubbock.
Great to see you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. Always appreciate being your first listen on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you once again, my man. And now on the heels of, well, truly a Pac-12 media deal being presented. And that's where we'll kick off the show. We've got Red Raider football to get to coming up later on in today's episode. We're going to get to some newcomers who need to make an impact. Hello, welcome to Texas Tech. Now get busy making a hand. We'll talk about some guys on that list and also wrap it up, Chris, with some guys that we've seen before that are returning in 2023, but maybe with a bigger job than they've ever had before. We'll get to some ideas for that list as well before we are out of here. But starting out west, where we did see come to fruition, Chris, some details reported on what was presented to Pac-12 leadership yesterday, and most of that or all of that lining up with what we discussed on yesterday's program when you're talking about the realm that you're in, streaming heavy when it comes down to Apple, somewhere around a 20 to 25 million mark. I think they throw the 25 in just to be nice. And something we didn't touch on really heavily yesterday, but was out there and reported and a part of the conversation, and we did see it come to pass also, incentive-laden agreements possibly for the Pac-12 conference. Hey, if you do this, we'll give you this, which certainly could make it sound a lot rosier. I think I already used my Master P as a sports agent joke for the year, so I probably can't use it again here. But I'm thinking about Master P negotiating Ricky Williams' contract once upon a time. Incentive-laden did not go well. We'll see if it goes well for the Pac-12 conference. So a lot of what came to pass, Chris, we had discussed. Anything stand out to you or surprise you, however, as to what bubbled up to the surface?
I think the gist is this. You're right. It's essentially, this is a streaming platform mostly. Apple would be the carrier. I think there is some minor ESPN, Fox involvement, linear programming, but I think it, again, minor. And I don't think – you mentioned the word tiers has been mentioned, not TEARS, not leaking liquid awesome, which some of these folks may be doing, but tier TIERS, in that we can do this and we'll pay out this, or we can kind of roll the dice a bit, folks. You know, George Kliavkoff talking to the group and saying if we hit some ratings or in some. You know, if they get enough subscribers based on this, if we kind of check some boxes here, we can, roll the dice a little bit and get this. But that you're gambling, and because if you don't hit those incentives, I think that you could get less than. So it's kind of like the bird in the hand type deal. But this is the Arizona Board of Regents, which is, as I understand it, I think this is they basically kind of run Arizona and Arizona State in that state. And it's not anybody that's officially associated with the school. I read their civic leaders and, just kind of important people that have ties to both of these schools. And I don't think it means that one school can't do what the other does. I think that this group would prefer that these schools stay the same. But you have a meeting yesterday, that lasts, I think, 40 seconds before they go, okay, we're going to take this to executive session. This is the non-public portion of what we're going to do here. Who knows what they discussed, I think, or the way that they're leaning. But, boy, I tell you what, it all points to those Arizona schools in Utah coming to the Big 12. And I think that they're the timing is just really the only thing here. I think it may take days, of weeks, maybe just kind of sort through this. And again, you keep reading everybody going, man, I just don't want to be the one that puts the bullet in this deal. Yet nobody's blaming the Big Ten commissioner. He's ultimately the one that put the bullet in it. You know, the Big 12 was reeling and all that. I mean, nobody looked at the SEC commissioner and was like, damn you. You know, like how, you know, I mean, like it's those people's fault. You know, you're not the one that's going to put bullet in the.
Is that really where you kind of roll as to the commissioner? Because I think we all kind of choose our own target for whose fault it is, I guess. But
let's go back to the streaming part of this. This is, you know, the Arizona president has basically stated on the record, if it's over half streaming, Arizona is not interested. And I don't know.
That was 2019. I assume you're talking about what I saw, which was a conversation, I think, from 2019. This is so wild. These comments are delivered on record. And he is saying more than 50% streaming, we couldn't do it. No one could do it, basically, in the Pac-12. He's speaking collectively. He's like 50-50, maybe, okay. But he's already rejected this deal, Chris, 2 years ago. Hypothetically, I guess I should add.
But it's these athletic programs. This is the front door to these institutions, universities. It's how they grow their brand. It's how they kind of student enrollment kind of varies based on the success of a basketball or a football program in many cases. This is just the harsh reality of it. And I don't know about you. I think you and I even talked about this as some of this was rolling along. But even last year during football season, I love the NFL a lot. I enjoy just watching the NFL. You dabble with some fantasy football on occasion. Not Hunter Deckers at Iowa State that was gambling on his own team. Two different things. But it's cumbersome because one thing I can guarantee about men, okay, they are all lazy when it comes to the remote control. And when you get into one of these streaming platforms, you can't just kind of move about the cabin and change channels freely and watch the other game and do all the stuff without hitting like 6 buttons. It's cumbersome. And so I think that the reality is that, you know, the streaming platform is just, it's not ideal for that very reason. I mean, because what we thought was a streaming platform was going to money whip one of these leagues. They were going to say, we know it's cumbersome, but we're going to pay you so much money that we're going to make you, you know, think twice about it. And you're going to, you know, we're going to kind of money whip you into submission here on this deal. And you're going to go, okay, ESPN Plus or Amazon Prime or Apple. Okay, we'll do it. The money is worth it. But in this case, it's not. This is just all they have. And so I just can't imagine some of these schools would say, this is what's best. Especially when they have other options like these other 3-4 corner schools do.
No, I think you're digesting the news yesterday. And, you know, if you've been in touch with reality at any point over the last decade or the last 2 years since the flame really began to heat up again, is a flame ever cold? I struggled in science. I think you have to kind of, you know, understand that things are continuing to proceed as planned, so to speak. You know, yet nothing changed yesterday, I guess is what I would say. It was mostly what you anticipated as far as a lower number. And it's like, hey, guys, I got bad news and I got bad news. They're going to pay you a little amount of money and nobody's going to see you. So what do you think? You want to make a deal here today? What can I do to put you into this Apple vehicle?
I don't think that George Kliavkov wanted to have this meeting and show his work, if you will. I think that he was forced to. Yeah,
but you have to at some point. Like, when did he, Chris? Yeah. He's been ducking and dodging these meetings. Like,
he knew,
of course,
he knew what he knew, and I think that he didn't want to have to share what he knew. But yesterday, again, forced to do that, which could be the final nail. I don't know, because I think everybody involved here was like, okay, man, we got to know something. You can't have had worked on this a year and a half. And it's like the Penske file in Seinfeld, you know. It's like,
right.
I don't know what's in it, man. and then Mr. Penske comes in. He's like, "We've been indicted," and so George Costanza, he's just taking crackers to work. And so I don't know if that's what Kliavkov was doing, sitting 8 to 5 with a pencil and some crackers in a briefcase. But
man, either way, it lends itself to So many great Seinfeld references. So hopefully this story just continues to roll on. But yeah, sure. Bet on yourselves, Pac-12. Go for the incentive-laden stuff, the subscriber-laden stuff. It worked out so well with the Pac-12 network, which was one of the missteps in that they anticipated much higher subscriber numbers or distribution than they were ever able to achieve. And yeah, that damn show your work has tripped up many of a test taker, Chris. And back to a science class, just maybe looking up for inspiration, down in desperation, and occasionally to the side for information. And my girl Sean's a little better at biology than I was. And I see, what she got? A, B, C, D. Yes, C. All right, perfect. C. Show your work. Damn. Show my work. So that could trip many a man up. Best of luck to George Kliavkoff and the gang. I think, as we sit here today rooting as Big 12 fans or rooting as Texas Tech fans, obviously wanting to see the conference grow, that movement continues to build is the way I feel following some of the news that we got yesterday. So we'll see what the timeline has to look like and maybe when the climax will come, and then all of a sudden you will birth a new Big 12. Truly. Okay, up ahead, we're bringing it back to the LBK. Let's get to Joey McGuire and the Red Raiders. Got a couple of different ends of the spectrum to get to. First, want to talk newcomers on the horizon, Chris, that will have just about zero time to acclimate before they're going to really be asked to carry a heavy load. We'll talk about some of that needed impact from these newcomers. And then I also want to get to maybe newcomers to the spotlight or the limelight or a regular full-time, say, starting job, but guys that we have seen before. We'll talk about some who are returning but promoted, and you're needing a lot out of them as well. So we are football heavy the rest of the way out. And getting to it next on Locked On Texas Tech. First, today's episode brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. And in this day and age, every new hire can feel like a huge gamble. And when we're talking about your business or livelihood, that's not ideal. But LinkedIn Jobs is here to help by helping you find the best qualified candidates available fast and for free, all on one easy-to-use and secure platform. Simple but specific targeting tools allow you to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to consider. They go beyond just resume data by using insights from your job post, company, and their 875 million member profiles to put your post in front of the most qualified candidates faster than anyone else. So go to linkedinjobs.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedinjobs.com/lockedoncollege today to identify the most qualified candidates and connect with them fast and for free. Just like a bad hire could sink your ship, the right hire could take your business to new heights this year. And it's no coincidence that small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. It's so easy. Even a podcast host could do it. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free today with LinkedIn Jobs. Terms and conditions apply. Thanks for making Locked On Texas Tech a part of your day on the Locked On Podcast Network. Subscribe on YouTube if you haven't so far, or wherever you get this podcast, so you never miss an episode. Football just around the corner. Fall camp almost upon us, Chris. And obviously a lot of the things we can anticipate from a personnel standpoint are subject to change. Maybe I'll start putting that up in the corner of the screen, a big asterisk, because competition will begin to play out. Some will rise, some will fall, so everything subject to change. But you and I thinking about a couple of different categories here today, and we'll start in the newcomer category. Would be great to slip into the college football experience like an old man into a warm bath, very, very slowly, right? Take your time. And some will kind of have that opportunity. Others don't so much have that opportunity. So we're talking about newcomers who are also almost immediately getting that pat on the back and kind of looking at you like, what are you going to do for us, son? I hope, Chris, this isn't a really long list. I don't think a team wants this to really necessarily be a long list. You don't want to have to look to some of these guys green behind the ears. But the transfer portal also changes this to a tremendous degree, because some of these newcomers are not newcomers to college football now, just new to your program, right? So I'm curious to hear from you as to who in this category is standing out?
So we talked about trying to, address this kind of topic. It was like, okay, which newcomer really needs, do you need to step up and needs to be a dude for you? And you really could make the case, and I could make an argument I certainly could for Dre McCray, just to extend the field. We know, that speed was a problem with your offense in general last year, and that you're forced to drive the field and go for it on fourth down a lot, and you needed somebody that could take the top off, get behind the defense, things like that. He really needs to be able to do that. I think Rusty Stats needs to be as good as what we think he's going to be and solidify that offensive line like Joey is. Joey's went out of his way to basically talk about the offensive line is the biggest change in the team compared to last year. And I think a lot of that has to do with Rusty Stats. And yes, Cole Spencer too, and switching your tackles and moving, but it all was predicated by Rusty. But the guy that I'm going to answer that I think needs to, because he's had so much hype, and because if he doesn't do it, I don't know where it comes from. But that's Steve Linton. He's the one that needs to be an elite, semi-elite pass rusher. If you don't have this from him, you've moved Josiah Pierre to inside backer. Yes, you're hoping Miles Cole is also a bit of a disruptor, but again, he's not a newcomer per se. Maybe we get to him in a second. But Steve Linton really needs, because he's only got, Cowan, 4.5 career sacks, used in a much different scheme. I think he's a different player. He's put on a lot of weight, and we know what Tim DeRuyter can do to showcase somebody like this' ability. But he's the one that I would say I'd point to and say he needs to step up for you and be a dude. And I'm not no extra pressure. Heck, everybody else is like first round draft pick. I'm like, that's pressure. I'm just saying he needs to, for the sake of the team, of the newcomers. And I don't include CJ Baskerville just because there's a lot of depth and things around him that I don't think it's like, if he's just a good player, you're going to be just fine. But I really think you need Steve Linton, though. If you want to have the type of season that you hope for, you need to have him be a guy that is potentially special for you.
Well, and for some context to this conversation, you can go back to our biggest shoes to fill conversation and then maybe kind of start there. Like, all right, these guys we name, if they have newcomers in the mix as far as the next wave, then maybe that's where you go first. And certainly Tyree Wilson was mostly or almost entirely at the top of everyone's list in the YouTube comments or among our perspectives as well. So you do begin to think about, all right, who's going to pick up that load? And obviously Linton among those newcomers, I think, is a great choice yourself. I'm glad you went offensive line mention as well, though, because I was really tempted to go to our guy Rusty Stats, because I just think that's such a crucial spot. And if you're going to make any headway as a program, and I'm talking like sustained success, big picture wise, you have got to trend in the right direction along the offensive line. And then you got to sustain that. You've been trending in the right direction up front defensively, and you have somewhat sustained it still in the early going. But we've seen some proof of performance. Offensive line just still hit or miss, and obviously seeing some duck and cover moments a season ago that you're looking to avoid. All right, well done, Chris. Now, on the other side, and you alluded to a couple of these guys, I think, as well, that are going to get some mentions as far as guys we have seen before or who already were on campus returning in 2023, but for whatever reason, a promotion possibly in store, whether it's losing a guy in front of them to graduation or to Wisconsin or Oklahoma or wherever, or if you're talking about, hey, the doctor's out of my way, because I thought Cole Spencer might be a nice mention as well for a returner that is much needed to make that kind of impact. Chris, I think you've mentioned some other guys throughout this offseason as well that I'm wondering if you go to here. So who's popping up on this kind of list? Somebody that we're somewhat familiar with, but expecting to maybe see a lot more of this season. Who's popping up on this kind of list? Somebody that we're somewhat familiar with, but expecting to maybe see a lot more of this season.
I thought, Cameron Valdez is a name. I think there's not many on offense, okay, just because you didn't lose a lot. Obviously, Cameron Valdez will fill the void left by Sir Roderick Thompson. But you think about, we've already touched on the offensive line. All your receivers are back. Your quarterbacks are back. And so I guess other than Cameron Valdez, I'll go over to defense. And I think I can give you two names that were here last year that played. That there was a few minor injuries and all that, but I expect them both to have primary vital roles this year. And I love both of them. I think they're both what we've seen from them in limited snaps and plays and all that. I think it's great. But again, now it's time to take the next step, and that is Jacob Rodriguez at interior linebacker. Mm-hmm. He was used primarily as a blitzer on third downs and some things like that last year, and would fill in or be on the field with Krishan Kosai. But he's going to be heavily involved now. He's still a younger player, but this was a high school quarterback that transferred here and walked on and all that stuff. He's now on scholarship and all that, and he is really good football player. Played at Wichita Falls Rider, could do a little bit of everything, and was on scholarship at Virginia as a quarterback. And so, but now he's bulked up, and I think he's bulked up. He's about I'm going to guess about 240, and just really played well last year. But he's now, and he missed the spring. So, but now I think he's going to be asked to start at one of those interior spots at Sam or Mike, linebacker. The other one,
interesting. That's an interesting choice. I didn't expect that one.
Yeah, well, because we know the void left by Krishan and Kosai.
True,
and that's one of the biggest questions on the entire team. And I have a lot of confidence in Josiah Pierre, and I didn't really answer with him just because he's had to switch positions. He's an older guy. I just went for a different answer, I guess.
Well, and he's already kind of been full time. I mean, we've seen
a little bit. Yep, absolutely.
Albeit at a different position, but we've seen a ton of him, and glad to see it again.
Yep. And so him and Josiah and Jacob, the I guess J squared right there, inside linebacker. I think those guys have a lot of pressure just because of who they're replacing, and those other two guys were so productive and durable that but the other guy you mentioned, Cowan, and I don't know if you want to answer this one or
no, go ahead.
I can
go ahead,
but you touched on it because it was well documented that there was the one main transfer last year kind of out of the blue a bit was Reggie Pearson. Yes, Kobe Minor left to go to Indiana. His brother would go there, and that was an NIL related, it appeared. But Reggie Pearson, was a name that people around here were familiar with, and he left back in December.
And I was fond of. I liked him as a football player.
Prior to the bowl game, he left, and I think a lot of people liked him. I think what we all saw, he would unload on you, big hit. Would he get lost in coverage a little bit, get beat over the top? Yeah, but would he try to put you on a poster, if you will, for a defensive back? Would he kind of, force a fumble? Would he really try to hurt Dylan Gabriel in overtime? All the above, yes. Okay. But I think as bowl practices and as kind of the staff saw more of Tyler Owens, the healthier version or the healthy version of Tyler Owens, I think that, and then, combine that with Reggie's, struggle in pass coverage. I think that, Tyler had kind of overtaken him at that spot. And I think Reggie was maybe looking at being just kind of a rotational guy when all things being equal. And so Tyler Owens is somebody that I think is an answer to this question. I think there's a lot expected. I think his measurables would tell you if he plays really well, he's an NFL caliber safety. And yes, I say that with all seriousness. I believe that he's got, he's been talked to by the scouts have kind of talked to the folks at Tech about, he's on some boards just because, again, but he's got to go do it. But you can't, and he was all over the place in the bowl game. I mean, just flying all over the field, and he doesn't struggle in coverage. I don't know if he hits as hard as Reggie Pearson few do, but he's very athletic and will pop you, and he's aggressive, and he's good in the run game. Yeah. Yeah,
intimidating presence out there.
6'2", 6'3", 210,
Yeah.
215. So anyway, those are my answers.
The Owens one, I was going to be disappointed if you didn't include, because you've been beating the Tyler Owens drum for a while, and I thought that was going to be a great answer. But the Rodriguez one it may factor in even more heavily for Texas Tech. I know that Owens is part of that group that you were attributing to help surrounding CJ Baskerville. So it's not like you can say the same thing for Owens necessarily, because he's one of those guys you're expecting to provide that frontline help. So the Rodriguez situation may be even as or more intriguing, just because it seems a little bit more wide open as far as the linebacking core and who's setting the standard here. Where's the line? I think obviously Pierre is a guy that you're going to want to look at, but obviously also playing something different in 2023 than he has before, or at least within some recent history. So leaves the door wide open for who knows what, hopefully only good things. I do have to go back before we leave, though, to our guy, because this is just a path unlike any other that we're talking about here. Cole Spencer. Did you know Cole Spencer started his first college football game in 2017? The man is looking to have a family. He's checking out his pension. I mean, he's thinking about the next phase in life. But God, will you just let him play some football first? This dude, I'm so intrigued by Chris, because obviously last season just the story derailed before it could even start. And because of the position, because of the group he's in, that offensive line, you just go back to ultimate importance. And I think I don't know what he feels individually, but I feel some pressure for him, if that's a real thing that a psycho wouldn't say. I don't know that there's an offensive lineman there's a higher expectation for that I haven't seen. Does that make sense? Because I mean, I'm counting on him to be part of that brigade that's taking them in the right direction, but I've seen nothing. So it feels a little bit unfair almost.
But I think that the part of that question that you ask aloud is like Zach has seen it. You know, Stephen Hamby has seen it. They know exactly what he's capable of because they coached him and dealt with it firsthand. And I think that's why you get the praise. And that's why they sought him out, you know, and that's why I think at some point last year, I remember you and I we had just started doing the show, and I guess I mentioned something about, you know, Cole Spencer, man, he could be out for a bit, you know, maybe the year. And I think you were like, you what? You know, because I mean, but I think that, you know, he just had that issue. I think it was like, okay, try to get ready by this date. If you just can't, we're going to shut you down. And I think that there was this weird mixed emotion in the building last year whenever they ultimately decided to shut him down, just because it was going to suck for the immediate. Although you were kind of wondering, are we going to get the best of this kid? You know, even if he does come back, you're talking about last season. But I think that then you quickly go, but man, getting him next year could be huge. And now here next year is. So hopefully he stays healthy. I think he's just a great, mature kid. I mean, you could just tell like the maturity or man, young man. I just think that it's fun to have guys that are just a bit older. So when you're going up against the BYUs of the world, it's a fair fight, you know. You go on a mission, but you know, hey,
Chris, 36 consecutive starts before he arrived in Lubbock. He made for Western Kentucky. This dude is seasoned on top of seasoned. And just checking out the bio, last year's bullet point is this: considered a good off-the-field role model for a young offensive line. Ain't nobody here to be considered a good off-the-field role model for a young offensive line. They're here to hit people. So I'm sure he is chomping at the bit as much as anyone to get on the field in 2023. But good on you for being considered a good off-the-field role model for a young offensive line. Cole, good on you. Can't wait to see you out there mixing it up in 2023. All right, some good stuff to chew on there, Chris. Appreciate the perspectives and insight as always, my man. The time as well, and we're going to do it again tomorrow. See you then.
Sounds good. Keep hope alive, everybody.
And subscribe on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. For Chris, I'm Casey. We'll see you for the next round right back here on Locked On Texas Tech.